After I graduated from high school, I got a job in a factory that made automobile parts. There were skilled craftsmen who worked at this factory, but I wasn't one of them. I was an unskilled laborer whose work consisted mostly of pushing buttons on pounding machines that smelled of oil and steel. Every hour, a whistle sounded, requiring us to take a 5-minute break. This was a safety measure, intended to keep us from being careless with the great machines. There was an obligatory lunch break secured for us by the union. There were also many moments of waiting for others farther up the line to perform their tasks. The work I did was not hard, but it was monotonous. Often the assembly line I was on had a quota for the number of parts it was expected to produce. When the counter reached that number, we were done for the day. We weren't allowed to make any more parts, but we weren't permitted to leave the factory either. So we whiled away the remainder of our time sitting in the cafeteria, waiting for our shift to end. Indeed, this work was so easy that it was difficult for me to call it work at all. As a result, my time there was marked by tedium more than anything else. The boredom of the work itself was complemented by the greater boredom of the rest that followed it. Neither was especially satisfying. While work is meaningful, and God uses our work to provide for us, work alone cannot give meaning to our lives. Work is the servant, not the master. However, we live in an age in which work has become an end in itself. When work loses its purpose, rest also loses its meaning. This is not because rest serves work, neither is it because work justifies rest. It is because rest, in its rightful place, needs nothing to justify it. We do not work in order to justify the fact that we rest. We do not rest in order to work. Rest, as the Bible describes it, is our destiny. It's what we were made for. In this book, I'm arguing for the radical pursuit of rest. I should confess at the outset that I am not a radical. I do not live in a cave like St. Anthony or espouse an ascetic lifestyle. I say this because I'm afraid that the title of this book might give readers the wrong impression. When I write about the radical pursuit of rest, I'm not speaking of a life that can be lived only by a select few. Christ's invitation in Matthew 11:29 is addressed to all who labor and are heavy laden. But in a world made up of workers, rest itself is a radical notion. In a church that believes that worshipers must also be workers in order to justify their presence, rest is an uncommon experience. I'm not arguing that we pursue rest by radical means. Rather, it is the pursuit of rest itself that is radical. I write for ordinary people who hope to experience the easy yoke of Christ in the midst of struggle under normal circumstances. You do not have to be a radical to engage in the radical pursuit of rest. You do not have to be perfect before you can experience it. Rest is not reserved for the monk, the priest, the nun, or the pastor. It is God's gift offered to common people who work at ordinary jobs. Still, the idea of pursuing rest may seem like a contradiction in terms. Doesn't working at rest mean that the end result is not rest at all? The Bible describes rest as both a destination and a gift. Jesus invites us to receive rest from Him as a gift of grace. In this book, I make practical suggestions along the way. Some are very concrete, but this is not really a how-to book. The secret to rest is not what we do so much as how we see. Rest is both a location and an identity. It is a realm in which we exist. Rest is synonymous with grace, which is never seized by force, but always taken hold of freely by faith. Rest is also synonymous with Christ, who is both its primary proponent and chief architect. The first step in the radical pursuit of rest is to seek Christ. This is also the last step. When you find Christ, you will also find rest.